Some women don't chase, and yet they are never forgotten. Their absence lingers louder than their presence, and their silence cuts deeper than any wound. They are the women who walk through the world not as hunters of affection, but as keepers of their own sacred fire. They do not seek validation in desperate hands, nor do they beg for scraps of attention. Instead, they carry within themselves a presence that refuses to be diluted, a presence that does not need to scream to be felt. This kind of woman unsettles men, for the ordinary rhythm of male desire is simple: to be desired back, to be pursued in return, to feel the reassurance of being needed. Yet here is a woman who does not bend toward him like ivy to stone, who does not circle him like a moth to flame. She stands still. She does not move. And that stillness is what terrifies him, because it forces him to see that his worth was never the source of her attraction, that her desire is not a currency he can command. In the archetypal landscape, she is not the maiden who waits nor the lover who clings. She is the queen, the sovereign feminine, the one who rules her inner kingdom with quiet authority. Jung would say she has touched herself, the eternal center that cannot be possessed, only discovered within. And in that contact, she has become untouchable in the ordinary sense. She is not chasing because she has already found. She is not grasping because she has already claimed her own soul. To the unawakened man, this absence of pursuit feels like rejection. He cannot comprehend that her detachment is not about him, but about her alignment with herself. He interprets her silence as punishment, her distance as cruelty. Yet in truth, it is neither. It is simply the state of a woman who no longer seeks outside what she has found within. She is not punishing him, she is preserving herself. Here lies the paradox. The more she withdraws, the more unforgettable she becomes. Her absence is not a void, but a presence in disguise. He remembers her quiet gaze, the weight of her composure, the way she could sit in silence without demanding reassurance. And in remembering, he begins to ache, because he cannot erase the impression she left. She has become an archetype in his psyche, a figure larger than her body, a mirror of his own unintegrated feminine. This is why some women do not chase and yet are never forgotten. They embody the truth that love is not about possession but about resonance. And when the resonance is broken, they do not cling to echoes. They turn inward, listening only to the music of their own soul. That refusal to chase is not weakness. It is strength sharpened by silence. It is the strength of one who has stepped beyond fear, who no longer confuses attachment with intimacy, who no longer mistakes longing for love. Her detachment is not an act of withdrawal, it is a revelation. She has seen through the illusion that clinging binds two souls, and she knows instead that only freedom can hold them. So she lets go, and in letting go she becomes unforgettable, not because she stays, but because she leaves with her dignity intact. He feels the emptiness first as irritation. Her silence bothers him, though he will not admit it. He tells himself she is replaceable, that another woman will do. Yet beneath the bravado, something stirs, a discomfort that grows sharper with each passing day. For what he is truly confronting is not her absence, but the echo of his own incompleteness reflected back at him. Her detachment has become his mirror, and in it, he sees the shadow he has long denied. At the start, when he first met her, he mistook projection for love. Jung called this the anima, the unconscious feminine that every man carries, the inner image of woman that shapes his desire. He did not see her as she was. He saw the missing parts of himself dancing in her gestures, glowing in her eyes. She was a canvas for his own longing, and he adored the reflection he thought was hers. But when she withdrew, the illusion cracked. Without her presence to project upon, he faced a truth he could not escape. He was never in love with her alone. He was in love with the unlived parts of himself that she awakened. This is why her silence feels like punishment. It robs him of the mirror he depended on. He can no longer escape into her gaze, no longer use her as proof that he is worthy, desired, whole. Instead, he stands before the emptiness she left, and the emptiness stares back. What he thought was rejection is revelation. He must face the hollow within himself. First comes denial. He insists he does not care, distracts himself with conquest or work or noise. But the silence returns each night, pressing in like a shadow on the walls. Then comes anger. He curses her coldness, labels her detached, accuses her of cruelty in his thoughts. Yet the truth remains. Her silence only revealed what he was too fragile to admit, that he was never complete on his own. It is here the mirror turns ruthless, for her absence forces him into shadow work. Every projection he placed upon her, the nurturing mother, the adoring lover, the forgiving presence, falls away, and he is left staring at the wounds that gave birth to those projections. The boy who longed for a mother's tenderness, the man who feared abandonment, the ego that needed constant reflection to survive. All of it comes rising, uninvited from the depths. And yet, within this painful confrontation lies a possibility. If he chooses, he can begin the work of individuation, the long path of integrating the anima, reclaiming the feminine within, learning to love without needing to possess, learning to stand without needing to be chased. Her silence, then, becomes a teacher disguised as punishment. It forces him inward, where he must finally meet himself. The woman did not abandon him to destroy him. She simply stopped carrying his projections. And in that withdrawal, she returned him to the one person he has avoided his whole life, himself. Her detachment is his mirror. And though he may call it cruelty, it is in fact the most brutal kindness. For in losing her, he has the chance to find what was missing all along. Anger always arrives when silence becomes unbearable. At first, he believed her detachment was temporary, a passing mood, a strategy to provoke him. He waited for her to return with the softness he once relied on, the forgiving embrace that always restored his pride. But when days turned to weeks, and her stillness did not break, the anger began to swell. It was not directed at himself, though that is where the wound lived. No, he cast the blame outward, onto her. He painted her as cruel, cold, manipulative. He told himself she was punishing him deliberately, that her silence was nothing more than a weapon. Yet beneath those accusations lived a truth he could not face. Her silence was not an act against him, but a revelation of him. This is the paradox of projection. He saw in her detachment the cruelty he feared existed within himself. He saw in her silence the abandonment that haunted his earliest memories. What he called her betrayal was, in fact, his shadow rising to the surface. Jung knew this truth well. Whatever we cannot bear within ourselves, we will accuse the other of embodying. And so he raged, not at her, but at the unbearable reflection she had become. In his anger, he tried to provoke her. He spoke words meant to wound, tested her resolve with silence of his own, even sought other distractions to prove to himself that she was replaceable. But nothing worked, for every attempt at retaliation only amplified the hollowness. The substitutes could not mirror him as she did. The distractions could not quiet the silence that remained between them. The Stoics would have told him, anger is weakness disguised as strength. It is the soul's admission that it cannot control itself. And so his fury was nothing but a confession of need, a revelation of dependence. The louder he cursed her, the more he revealed how much power her absence held over him. What he wanted was not vengeance, but return. What he sought was not dominance, but relief from the storm within himself. But the archetypal woman does not bend before rage. Her silence was not a tactic to win, but a boundary drawn in fire. His anger, no matter how loud, could not trespass against it, for she was no longer reacting. She had withdrawn into her sovereignty where his storms could not reach. This, more than anything, enraged him further, that she could remain unmoved, that his voice no longer penetrated her calm, that his power over her had dissolved into nothing. Anger thrives on reaction, but she gave him none, and so his fury began to collapse inward, turning against himself. What he called her cruelty was in truth his own helplessness. What he named as punishment was his own shadow unveiled. For her silence was not an act of war, but a mirror held steady before his face. The more he struck at it, the more he bled. The mirror did not break. Only his illusions did. And in that breaking, he began to sense a darker truth approaching. Anger would not save him. For once, anger had burned itself out. Despair would take its place. When anger exhausts itself, despair quietly enters the room. No longer fiery, no longer loud, it comes as a heavy weight, a sinking realization that the silence will not break. The man who once believed he was irreplaceable now feels the sting of being forgotten. The woman's absence, which once felt like a challenge, now feels like eternity. In despair, he no longer accuses her of cruelty. The fire has gone out, leaving only ashes. Now he asks himself why she does not return, why his words hold no sway, why his presence no longer calls her back. He replays memories, seeking a flaw in the story, a moment where things could have turned differently. Yet every memory only deepens the truth he cannot escape. She has chosen herself over him.